Here's a number that stopped me in my tracks. You have roughly 38 trillion microbial cells living in and on your body right now. Compare that to your 30 trillion human cells and ask yourself, who's actually in charge here? Today, we're talking about your gut. Not the gut you learned about in school, digestion, enzymes, food going in one end and out the other. The gut that's quietly running your immune system, manufacturing your mood chemicals and determining whether you age fast or age well. Hippocrates said it. 2,500 years ago, all disease begins in your gut. The science, it seems, is finally catching up with them. Welcome to Health Matters, where the science of human flourishing meets the reality of everyday life. Your body is the most extraordinary thing you will ever live in, and it was built to thrive. But somewhere between the noise, the business, and the dodgy advice, most of us never got the owner's manual. I'm Michael Mole, and that's what this show is all about. Real science made human. I'm joined today by someone who helps patients translate that science into real food, real meals, and real life. Registered dietitian Abigail da Cruz. Abby, welcome to Health Matters. Not your first rodeo. Great to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
Abby, before we talk food, let's make sure people understand what we're actually dealing with when we talk about the gut. Most people think of the gut as a digestive tube, but that's not the whole picture, is it?
No, it's not. I think we are taught that our gut is only for food digestion. So it starts within the stomach and then really ends when we go to the bathroom. But that it's actually so much more complicated than that. Our gut is involved, and the gut microbiome got all these different bacteria within the gut that create our gut microbiome. And they're really this living ecosystem that help us with our food digestion. More, they help us with our immune system and regulating the immune system, from metabolism all the way to creating different nutrients like vitamins. All comes from the type of bacteria making up this ecosystem within your gut.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, there's way more to the gut than meets the eye, literally and figuratively, I suppose more literally than anything else. But I mean, your gut microbiome contains around 100 times more genes than your entire human genome. And running along the entire length of your digestive tract is what scientists call the enteric nervous system. For those listening, that's 500 million neurons operating almost independently of your brain. That's been called your second brain, and that name is not an exaggeration. So there's just way more to your gut than honestly meets the eye. Abby, let's talk diversity. I think as all South Africans do and should do, because the key insight from the research isn't about having more of one good bacteria. It's about diversity. Think of it like a rainforest. A monoculture farm can look productive on the surface, but the same crop row after row, but strip away the diversity and the whole system becomes fragile. One bug, one drought, and it all collapses. Your gut works exactly the same way. Diversity is your immune system's insurance policy. Large-scale population studies tracking tens of thousands of people consistently find the same thing, that a more plant variety in the diet equals a more diverse, more resilient gut microbiome. Abby, I know you're a big believer in diversity. Tell me a bit more about that.
I think it comes from the type of bacteria, as you said, this big rainforest of different types of bacteria making up the gut. That comes through to the food. We have to have a variety of food. And we know that even if I eat lots of different types of plants, that's going to feed different types of bacteria making up the gut. And so if we can start to increase the variety of different plant-based foods that we're eating, even if it's just one item extra that we're putting onto our plate, it can make a big difference in feeding these different types of bacteria making up your gut microbiome.
So, Abby, I mean, in concept, absolutely. But let's practically talk about what we can actually feed this ecosystem, as you described it, which is such an apt word. Feed the good is one of the most accurate pieces of health communication I've come across in a long time, because that's precisely the mechanism. So what does feeding a microbiome actually look like on a plate? I mean, this is what you do day to day with your clients. So help us out there, Abby.
We try to make nutrition so complicated, and it actually does not need to be. There are certain bases that we should all have in place. So I call it like a plate model. Think about dividing your plate in half. Half of that plate should be a variety of vegetables, not just one veg, but maybe two or three. Think of it like a rainbow. The more colors you have, the more diverse it's going to be, and the different bacteria it's going to feed. And then on the other half of your plate, divide that half in half again. So you've got a quarter available for a high fiber carbohydrate. Think of things like bulgur wheat or whole wheat couscous, quinoa or high fiber cracker breads. And on the other quarter should be a lean protein. And it is this base that is the cornerstone of a gut-friendly diet.
I'm going to ask you to spell quinoa, but maybe not now because I couldn't even spell it if I tried. I mean, that's just a good carbohydrate. But Abby, you're so right. The science backs you up completely. I think data from the American Gut Project, imagine that title for a project, tracked 10,000s or tens of thousands of people, found that individuals eating 30 or more different plant species, 30 or more per week, had significantly more diverse microbiomes than those eating 10 or fewer. Now, if you ask me, 30 plants sounds intimidating, but a handful of walnuts, a spoonful of flaxseed, different herbs on your eggs, they all count, don't they?
They do, yes. Even the spices that you're adding to flavor up a chicken, if you're doing Italian herbs and it's got a mix, you have different plants going into your diet.
What about South Africans and this high rate of obesity and overweight? And the fix isn't extreme dieting, is it? What would you say to that?
Absolutely not. We never want to do something extreme where we're cutting one food out compared and focusing on restriction. Rather, start to think about what can we add into your diet. Can we add more fruits and vegetables? Can we add more high fiber carbohydrates? We've got a massive obesity problem. And so this idea of restriction is always planted in our minds. And it's not that. It's about what can we do on a daily basis? It's a repeatable shift you can get right. And that's more important than what can we take away.
Love that. It's almost, there's a faith-based theory on you can't replace an idol without replacing it with something else. So I love what you're saying. It's not withdrawing or retracting. It's actually adding to. It's making diets more interesting and just filling your plate a little bit. But what about fermented foods? Of late, they seem to become quite popular. I think they've always been, but from a Western diet, maybe not so much because, and I think I'd be right in quoting a randomized controlled trial from 2021 from Stanford showed something remarkable, that a high fermented food diet outperformed even a high fiber diet in raising microbiome diversity, which is what we said is so vitally important, and reducing a whole bunch of inflammatory markers over the entire study. So we're talking kimchi and kefir and yogurt, sauerkraut, kombucha. Are you recommending those kind of fermented foods to patients?
Yeah, definitely. We want to include more fermented foods. I think in our South African food context, fermented foods might not be such a common item, but ones that we do find readily available include things like yogurt. Always try to advocate for including yogurt. It's got the live bifidobacterium and lactobacillus species that are added in that support a good gut microbiome. But you can also look at other items, things like kimchi or sauerkraut, kombucha. They are all fermented products that we can include a bit more into our diet. There's also a difference between a food item, a fermented food item, and a probiotic. So a probiotic has more of a capsulation of live bifidobacterium or probiotic species within them, and we use that in more targeted situations. Whereas as a general average person, we can definitely include fermented foods for getting these live additive cultures in our diet.
That's fascinating. I think a concept that I'd love to ask you about and plug into is something that surprises most people. Nutrition doesn't just change your waistline, because that's often what we think. It's food and fat. It affects your energy, your mood, your sleep, your long-term disease risk. And a lot of that runs through your gut. I mean, 90% of your serotonin, that's the primary mood regulating chemical in all of us, for those listening in, is made in your gut, not your brain. 90% of serotonin. I mean, think about that next time someone tells you depression is entirely in your head. It's not, it's in your gut. So what happens to your patients who clean up their diet, Abby? So they take your advice, they divide their plate into half and quarters, they eat according to how you describe and prescribe them to eat. What happens to their lives? Just give me an idea of how they change.
It's a very, very interesting question. And it's such a good question because so often we think people ask the dietitian, oh, how can I lose weight and how can I make it happen quicker? And that is not the basis of true nutrition. Yes, weight loss can be an outcome for those that are desiring it. But if you look at the changes that happen first, when we make better nutrition choices, we seem to sleep better. Our energy levels drastically improve. I often have a patient telling me, I don't have those energy slumps that hit me in the afternoon. Even from our skin health can improve. So we can stop looking at food just as a vehicle of weight loss, but rather food as a vehicle for nourishment of our whole body.
Yeah, tweet that, guys. That's amazing. And not just physically, but also mood-wise. I mean, from a bit of a sciencey perspective, your vagus nerve is this superhighway between your gut and your brain. But what's counterintuitive is that approximately 80 to 90% of signals on that vagus nerve travel not from your brain to your gut, but from your gut to your brain. So in a very literal neurological sense, your gut feelings are real. They're not a metaphor. They're neural communication. So to my point earlier, Abby, where do you see the quickest wins for patients from a food perspective when it comes to mood in particular?
We definitely see a more stabilization in mood, a little bit more feeling of happiness. I think that comes from, you chatted about serotonin, another hormone that is created by a type of bacteria in the gut is GABA. GABA can cross that blood-brain barrier and affects rates of depression and anxiety. So overall, an improved mood, lower amounts of anxiety and depression are most common symptoms in changes in mood.
And would you say, Gabby, there is some food types that are good mood food or good food moods? How do I say it? Good mood foods.
Good mood foods. I like that. I think you should coin it. I think most foods that are good for your gut bacteria are going to be good mood foods. But we chatted about the fermented foods. Another one would be your high fiber whole grain starches, like the oats and the quinoa and your brown breads and high fiber starches. Those are going to be good, as well as omega-3. Omega-3, we actually know it can change the diversity, the type of bacteria in your gut. And omega-3 has benefits effects on mood from a neuroinflammation perspective. So that's one that we'll find in things like fatty fish, from salmon to trout. Mackerel, sardines, and pilchards are good ones to include as well.
Brilliant. There was this, it has been and always has been, this idea of shop the perimeter strategy. You know, the fresh produce, proteins, dairy, and leave the ultra-processed in the middle aisles. Is that still true? Do you still suggest that to clients? Shop on the outside of the grocery store?
I love it. It's such a practical thought. If you think of a shop, 100%, you've got the more ultra-processed items in the middle. So if you do shop the perimeter, starting at the top, you'll get all your fruits and vegetables. Then you'll move to the back for your leaner proteins by the butchery or the fish section. On the outskirts, you might find the bakery that might have a high fiber bread or something we can include there. So it's definitely a lovely tip to keep in mind. And try and not go up and down those center aisles, down the chips, down the sweets aisle, because often if we walk down them, there's so many tantalizing options. Something's going to land up in the shopping basket, and maybe a few too many. I'm not saying we shouldn't have any. Of course, there's space for diversity and treat items, but it can help to just limit the number that we tend to get really marketed into buying, really.
It's true. That middle aisle is a killer for me. I have a horrendous sweet tooth. I've been fighting my whole life. Maybe we'll get you on a call again soon, Abby, and talk about how we down-regulate that sweet tooth. But for a moment, let's turn our attention to sleep, because I think sleep itself is a gut health intervention. I mean, sleep deprivation measurably reduces microbial diversity within days. Your microbiome's circadian rhythm, if you like, is disrupted by poor sleep, and disrupted microbiome worsens sleep quality. So it's this bidirectional relationship. And most people don't know that sleep is part of the gut health equation. What do you say to that, Abby?
So sleep, we know, is going to be affecting hormones. Cortisol can start to rise, and cortisol is going to be impacting on our HPA axis, which is another stress-related axis within the gut-brain system. So sleep is this underthought item that we don't really focus on enough. And we should be trying to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, and many of us are not achieving that.
You're so right. And thank you for saying that. We talk about sleep a lot on Health Matters. It really is foundational to so much of what we do when it comes to our health. But something else we do on Health Matters on a regular basis is we bust myths. Love doing that. And it's time to bust a few of those. I mean, diets trend faster than TikTok dances. So we're going to cut through the noise, Abby, and throw out a few myths followed by the real truth. So science first. So you go with a myth and tell me what the truth is. I'll follow that with a myth and we'll take it from there. What do you say? You first.
Sounds good. Must I go first?
Go for it.
What do you think about people who say carbs are the enemy?
Yeah, I heard that often. What's the truth? They certainly aren't.
So definitely, carbs are not the enemy. Carbs can actually sometimes be the hero when it comes to gut health. You want to focus on increasing the number of high fiber carbohydrates. This would include fruits, legumes like beans, lentils, chickpeas. It would include those high fiber whole grain starches like whole wheat pasta, high brown fiber rice, etc. Rather focus on those type of carbohydrates and limiting our intake of ultra processed refined carbohydrates. This would be things like potato chips or lots of white rice or sweets or chips and chocolates and biscuits. So it's not all carbs are the enemy. It's more focusing on the right type of carbs to include into your diet.
So we need a drum roll, sort of like boom, myth busted. Here's one I hear quite often is I need a probiotic, not fiber. So let's bust that right off the bat. Without prebiotic fiber, probiotic bacteria can't survive or even colonize. I mean, food is always the foundation. Supplements support it, but probiotics without prebiotics is like planting seeds in concrete. How's that? Give me another myth, Abby.
What about going completely sugar-free means everything is healthy? Well, this myth, sugar-free is just one aspect on a food label. You've got to look at everything. Often items that are sugar-free have additive non-nutritive sweeteners. And there are studies that are starting to link excessive sweetener intake with changes in your gut microbiome and not potentially positive changes. So it is something to be aware rather than just focusing on one line item like sugar-free. You have to look at the whole food and its complete nutrient label.
I think that should take a lesson in itself for all of us is how to read the labels on food. And often if you've got to read a food label, is it food? There's the other question. But you're so right. I've got a myth here, a gut cleanse. And this is one that really makes my skin crawl. A gut cleanse will reset my microbiome. Now, please hear me emphatically. There is no peer-reviewed evidence that any commercial cleanse improves microbiome health. Highly restrictive protocols can actually harm or reduce your microbial diversity short-term. And we just talked about that. Diversity is king. So your gut doesn't need a reset. It needs consistent daily nourishment. Would you agree, Abby?
Absolutely. You can't be better true. I think we try to take sometimes the easier way out. And so we hope that something like a cleanse might fix it quickly. Unfortunately, we don't really get anything from quick fixes. It does take a little bit more hard work and consistent change to lead to consistent results.
Absolutely. Hey, here's a myth I also hear all the time. Would love your take on this. Supplements can fix a poor diet. In other words, my food's not great, but I take a supplement, I'll be okay. What do you say to that?
They supplement, they do not substitute. The difference between a supplement and a substitute. Supplements, they can be there in certain patients who need them, but they are not the basis. We've got to focus on food first. Our food is the food for your gut bacteria. So if you're not eating correctly, your gut bacteria are not going to be able to thrive either.
Yeah, you're so right. I often say spinach has got 800 cofactors in it. We are not even close to matching that matrix in any pill form. So I loved what you said. They supplement, they don't substitute. Ketosis is a big one. Paleo diet, keto, living in ketosis is the answer. For me, that's a bit of a myth that needs to be busted. It can assist with short-term weight loss. Prolonged ketogenic diets reduce fiber intake substantially, which reduces, there it is again, microbial diversity. So whole food carbohydrates are not the enemy. To throw it back to your very first myth, Abby. What about gluten?
Yes.
Any myths around gluten?
Yes, huge myths. Often people think gluten-free means it has to be healthier. It's not true. Gluten-free products are actually made specifically for patients that have celiac disease, which only affects about less than 1% of our population. And so it doesn't mean that a gluten-free product is going to be a gut-friendly product. Often gluten-free products can actually have higher amounts of added fats and sugars and be very refined with a low fiber intake. So again, it's going to go back to go for those high fiber whole grain carbohydrates. You don't need a gluten-free carbohydrate.
Said not too many dietitians would say that, so I'm very impressed. Abby, here's a myth I heard literally this week. The Mediterranean diet is just a fad or just a trend. No, it's one of the most, and I love the fact that you're echoing that, one of the most evidence-backed dietary patterns in all literature. I mean, high in polyphenols, fiber, healthy fats, fermented dairy, and variety. We talked about that a lot today. Every pillar of microbiome health. So the Mediterranean diet is not a trend. It's a gold standard. I hope you're listening. Abby, for those who are listening to this right now and starting from zero, so they've got a classic South African diet, brine meat, white bread, cold drinks, maybe a vitamin C tablet to supplement, not substitute, or to substitute, not supplement. What should they do first? Give me from a ground zero up, where do I begin?
I think you got to start with what can you add rather than what do you need to take away. You so often think of restriction versus inclusion and addition, this talk of variety that we've had. So what's one more vegetable that you could add to the braai? Can you do grilled mushrooms or put a butternut onto the coals and not just all the meat that goes onto our South African braais? Can we include vegetables that you're putting into your lunch? Can we include them into a snack somewhere along the way? Can I increase, instead of going for a packet of chips, can I include maybe some popcorn or some high fiber crackers as an alternative? These are small, consistent changes that will lead to results over time.
Yeah, that's amazing. So well said. Can I touch on probiotics very quickly? I mean, where does a quality probiotic fit in? Because I want to be clear on this for our listeners. Probiotics are not a shortcut around a poor diet. Abby, you said that right up front, but they do have a genuine evidence-based. And I mean, like you, I recommend them specifically post-antibiotic to help restore, disrupted microbial populations. When you and I take antibiotics, it carpet bombs all of our gut bacteria. I recommend it during high stress periods, travel. The key is choosing a multi-strain, scientifically formulated product with documented counts, not just whatever is cheapest on the shelf. How would you respond to that, Abby?
Yes, absolutely. We know a probiotic can be a very good tool as additional support to the patients who need it. So often as a dietitian, I see many patients struggling with IBS or IBD type of conditions where their gut microbiome has really decreased. They don't have that diversity. A probiotic can be a tool that can help prevent or treat symptoms. There's also so many new areas where it's coming up, from diabetes control even to mood and regulation there. So probiotics can be a tool when the right strain is used to treat the right condition.
Any clues in how we choose a good probiotic? Do we look for the probiotics in the fridge or the ones that are in airtight, light tight canisters or whatever? I mean, you get the point. How do we choose a good probiotic? What should we be looking for?
It's such a good question. I think most of us, including us health practitioners, struggle with the same type of question. How do we go choose out of all the variety? And I think something to keep in mind is it a product that has some clinical research backing it? Is there health and safety profiles? Do the strains have a randomized trial that shows this CFU count or the dosage can help adequately treat a condition? Is it made by a reputable company? What's its formulation and its shelf life? These are all things that we have to consider. I think a good thing to know is that there's not going to be necessarily one hero product. Certain products are going to be best for certain conditions. So it's not about one just product overtaken compared to the rest. Really is using the right product in the right patient.
Brilliant. Oh, Abby, thank you so much. It's been exactly the kind of conversation I wanted to have today. Science first, practical, honest. Tell listeners, here's what I'd like you to walk away with today. Your gut microbiome is not some obscure biology concept. It's the system sitting beneath your immune health, your mental health, your metabolism, and your longevity. And the research is telling us something genuinely empowering. You're not powerless here. The choices you make 2 or 3 times a day at every meal are actively shaping who you're becoming biologically. You don't need a detox. You don't need an elimination diet. You don't need a supplement stack. You need variety. Abby said it. You need fiber. You need fermented food. You need sleep. And when the biology needs extra support, a quality probiotic. Feed the good. It's that simple. And it starts today. Hey, man, if this episode helped you, subscribe to Health Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next week for another conversation that makes health easier to understand and part of everyday life, because your health really, really matters.